There's an airplane passing by if you guys are hearing that. Sorry. How you guys doing today? Foxy here. Thank you for joining me on my Twitch channel once again. Today we're going to be doing, well, we, as in I am going to do a special presentation, and it's on the subject of sex positivity. I figured that it's a long time coming because, you know, we've seen with the emergence of third wave feminism, a feminism that is more sex positive. Personally, I've seen it pioneered much fiercely by people such as Feminista Jones on Twitter, Jamila Lemieux, and a host of other people, and it really makes sense. And I figure that given some of the things that have been taking place recently, like the whole debacle at Evo, at this past year's Evo, or sorry, this year's Evo that passed, there was a couple of situations where folks were found to have been behaving in a very gross way in regards to sexual misconduct. So, and I'm going to talk about that at some point. I know it's been a while, but I figure before I get into the subject of why I think that sex positivity is needed very much in the fighting game community, I figure it would be a good idea to sort of explain what that means. Because, you know, if you just go up to the average person and just be like, oh yeah, you know, be sex positivity, they may look at you cross-eyed like, what the hell is that all about? So that's where I come in. So I'm going to give a nice little slideshow presentation. Before I do that, let me make sure that folks know that I went live. I'm not too sure if they did or not. Let me see. I'm checking my Twitter now. I was supposed to go live at 12, but I was running a bit late at first, and then of course my damn computer was running slow as usual. So yeah. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, and I guess it turns out that it didn't send. Go live. I guess it didn't. So let me just let folks know. Share link to my channel. There we go. Just let folks know that we're about to get into some sex positivity. Shazam. There we go. Okay, so, and let me just share. Oh, I think I just saw a picture of Tessa Thompson. She's friggin' hot. I'm not even gonna lie about that. Let me share on the Discord. I joined this new group. I was given an invite for, I think it's called, here we go, Black Creators United on Discord. So let me just put that in here. And we can get into the meat and bread of the topic now. So, okay. Okay. So, hold on one second. Okay. And and here we go. There we go. So, boom. Yeah, I got it. So, what is sex positivity? It's a quickish primer for regular schmegular folks. Next. So, sex, and sexuality in the US of A. Now, I don't think anyone will argue this, but as a society in North America, in the United States specifically, we definitely still have a hard time talking about sex. How to do it, when to do it, who can do it, etc., etc. And a big reason that we continue to have this hard time is because our country's sex culture is still pretty conservative because of the Christian fundamentalist religious culture that we have in this country. Now, it's true that we are a secular nation, or we're supposed to be a secular nation, and there is a separation of church and state, or there's supposed to be a separation of church and state. Protestantism, more specifically Christianity, is still pretty intertwined with our culture, and it intersects and it bleeds into other things, into how our gatherings are forming of morality, right and wrong, our ethics, how we feel about certain things, and more specifically how we think and feel about sex. So now, this Christian fundamentalist culture defines sex as sacred and only to be done in marriage. And if it's done outside marriage, a person becomes dirty or impure, immoral, and of no value to society, especially if the person violating this, quote, rule is a woman. I don't think anyone would argue with that. While it's true that I think when it comes to Catholicism, I think sex is viewed as sacred in marriage, but there's a bit more leeway in that, if only because it enables the married couple to come together to be much closer. So, yeah. And these conservative leanings are the result of our country being a patriarchal society. Next, I said the other P word, not other people's property or that other P word, patriarchy. So, what do you mean by patriarchy, Foxy? Well, I'll tell you guys. A patriarchy, it is a social system or structure where men are predominantly in power and are the majority in various areas, like roles in government. As you can see from our government, the majority of folks who represent us in politics, in the House of Representatives and the Senate, which both those make up Congress. Majority of folks who are voted in are men. The majority of positions held, let's say, in the current occupant of the White House and his cabinet are men. Moral authority. This means that men are held up as the arbiters of dictating and putting forth what is right and what is wrong. Social privileges. Men typically are favored more when it comes to things like men being able to have casual sex, men being predominant in different spheres like in STEM and STEAM, and video game communities, and in certain other professions, and men are given a lot more leeway to succeed or fail versus other groups. Typically, when it comes to whether folks think that a certain statement is factual or not, more often than not, men are looked to as the arbiters of what is factually correct and what is not. And also ownership of property. Before the suffrage movement and the first and the second wave of feminism, majority of the time, men were the ones who could own property. There was a time when women were not able to do things like get a car, co-sign on a home, or not even co-sign a home, purchase her own home or apartment or automobile, things like that. Of course, in other countries where the societies are patriarchal and women's rights movements aren't really as strong, there are still some problems there. Like we saw in Saudi Arabia, I think women just got the right to be able to drive on their own, which, I mean, maybe it's a really big thing for them. Meanwhile, for us, we're like, huh? So, yeah. Now, this social system, patriarchy, the structure is born of, and it's held up by an ideology that justifies it. And just for you guys to take a note here, most societies around the world, including the United States, are functionally patriarchies because men are predominantly in power for the most part. So not just the United States, Canada, Mexico, the United Kingdom, and other European countries. So, yeah. So, speaking of patriarchy, what is the ideology of a patriarchy or of patriarchy? Okay, so patriarchal ideology, it's basically the belief that men are inherently better than or superior to women. That's basically it in a nutshell. And note that that the ideology can be justified and is often justified via religion or through pseudoscience. So yes, one doesn't have to believe that a god or gods made men to be the primary person or the dominator of everybody else. Folks have justified it. Folks also continue to justify it through pseudoscience, like folks who are really invested in evolutionary psychology, Jordan Peterson, your typical MRAs, atheists who, while they don't believe that a deity or deities are responsible for creating things in the world, but somehow science dictates that men are inherently better than women or superior to women. Oops, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna write slides. Sorry about that, folks. So, the attitudes that come from the ideology of patriarchy. These may seem, hopefully these don't seem as complicated, but they're not. So the attitudes that we carry around with us all the time, that we don't stop to think of where they came from. Men are inherently smarter, stronger, and more qualified and rational than women. Now, this attitude is used to justify why men are predominantly occupy spaces and positions of power, like in STEM fields, in politics, in certain places in academia, why men make more money in those fields and in sports, why more men and boys play video games, etc., etc. Another attitude that comes from patriarchal ideology is that men are inherently virile heterosexuals, and that they must always consume and pursue sex. Always consume, meaning always have sex, and always pursue sex, meaning always, every action that they take, for the most part, is so that they can attain sex. Now, this attitude is used to justify things like catcalling, sexual harassment, misconduct, and assault towards women, and negative social value judgments of women. So, because it's thought of that men are inherently virile and they're always, they must always consume, and they're always pursuing sex. When women deny men this, we are all, we are judged as being prude or not fun to be around. That's sort of the one of the negatives one of the negative social value judgments that women are dealt with, that women deal with. Another attitude that comes from patriarchal ideology is that women are inherently submissive, therefore our bodies, attention, and labor are owed to men. That men, since we are inherently submissive and lower to men, therefore men are just entitled to us, essentially. And this attitude is used to justify treatment of women as objects to acquire and produce progeny to establish one's legacy, aka, get married, get knocked up, and have children. These attitudes shouldn't seem alien and familiar, because these are the attitudes that we are taught basically from cradle to the grave. Okay, so, and the ideology, the system, and the attitudes together of patriarchy make our culture sex negative. And a sex negative culture is one where sex and sexuality are framed and treated as risky and dangerous, immoral and wrong when done outside subjective criteria. Nasty and dirty when done for pleasure and not just for procreation. And sex negative culture also views sexual orientations and gender identities that aren't cisgender and heterosexual as wrong and immoral. Sex negativity is linked to numerous problems in our society, such as homophobia, transphobia, sexism, lack of comprehensive sex education in schools, ding, 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 which is something that the United States continues to deal with, rape culture, criminalization of sex work, marginalization of sex workers, just a whole host of problems. And I wanted to make a note here so that you guys know that patriarchal gender roles assigned to us and taught to us, regardless of the body we were assigned at birth, regardless of our gender, these roles that we are taught as that are compulsory, meaning that we must follow them. These roles enable sex negative cultures. And so what are the attitudes that our society has due to the sex negative climate and adherence to patriarchal ideology? Well, there's a couple of things. Well, for one, having casual sex strips women and girls of humanity and human value and are made dirty or unclean. I'm sure you guys are more than aware of this. That, like as I said before, while men can have casual sex and they aren't really judged harshly or aren't judged as harshly, somehow sex has this magical ability to strip women of all value. And if we even ponder the idea of having sex for pleasure and not and you know, outside of out of marriage, then we are dirty and unclean. And unintended pregnancies are suitable consequences or punishment for having unmarried sex. I'm sure, you know, this is something that we've seen, and something that I have definitely seen in my formative years. Usually the consequences are put on the person who ends up getting pregnant, that they shouldn't have had sex in the first place, otherwise they wouldn't have gotten pregnant. And because of negative associations with abortion that come, you know, via religion, most folks end up bringing children into the world that they were not ready to have, or didn't want, but are guilted into having because they believe that abortion as a medical procedure is murder, even though it's not. So, I'm sure we're aware of this one, even though thankfully it's gotten a lot of pushback because it's untrue. There's this idea that we have that men cannot be raped because men are always the consumers of sex. They are not the ones who are to be consumed. But we all know that's true. Men can rape other men. Women can rape men. Folks who are not part of a gender binary, they can rape men. Yeah. And that most women lie about being raped, even though the statistics of false rape accusations are pretty damn small. I think it's a single-digit percentage. But yet, the attitudes that we have about women, thanks to patriarchal ideology, with us being viewed as lesser than, as being submissive, somehow we are not to be believed whenever we come forth with accounts of any type of sexual misconduct or assault that has happened to us. Wearing less clothing is giving consent to being harassed, assaulted, and raped. I'm sure you guys are aware of this. This is basically an aspect of rape culture. Of course, when a woman is assaulted or harassed, catcalled on the street, or raped, the go-to question is one of the main go-to questions when it comes to these accounts is, well, what was she wearing? And then it's, well, what was she doing? Oh, look at her. Look at what she was wearing. How does she expect to go out looking like that and not have anything happen to her? And this goes hand in hand with the last point, that men cannot control their sexual impulses, and that women can, well, not only can, that we must control men's sexual impulses via our appearance with clothes and makeup and stuff like that. Oh, hello, Ryan, 1648. How are you? I'm sure you're probably the only one watching, but I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're doing okay. Sorry about that. But where was I? But yes, there is this assumption that men are supposed to be the ones who are so logical and rational, but yet when it comes to taking rejection from women, when it comes to looking at us and seeing what we're wearing or what we're not wearing, somehow they just become like babies, like children, and the onus is on us to help them keep their negative behaviors in check. And it's nonsense. It's just pure nonsense. And the last point, the creation of gendered slurs for women who behave sexually like men behave sexually, whether for pleasure or for profit, aka you guys know the terms: prostitute, whore, and of course the African American vernacular English word for whore, hoe. So yes, this basically, let's go back to the casual sex point. Patriarchal ideology states that men are inherently virile, so they must always consume sex and always pursue sex, and that's okay. But if women participate, if women and girls engage in this very same behavior, then we're the worst. Then we are like the worst human beings ever. We're whores, we're hoes, because apparently women aren't supposed to seek out sexual pleasure. And the pushback comes even harder for folks who who play for pay, like sex workers, escorts, cam girls, strippers, dancers, Nubia forbid that these folks, especially if they're women, are doing these things, are not, engaging in these things for free and just allowing themselves to be consumed as objects, that they're actually, utilizing giving a service, giving sex as a service, and expecting compensation for it. Then, oh my God, you're just the worst human being ever. It's nonsense, full nonsense, people. Okay, so how do we undo sex negativity? Well, there's a couple of things we can do. So to rectify this climate of sex negativity in our culture, we have to decolonize socially. We have to unlearn patriarchy, and we have to unlearn patriarchal ideology. And to do this, we have to adopt a philosophy of sex positivity. And, sex positivity, it basically rejects the status quo. It's about recognizing that patriarchal ideology, which has influenced and fueled social attitudes about gender, sex, and sexuality as we know it, that these attitudes, if you're sex positive, you realize that these attitudes, that the status quo, These attitudes are based on things that are largely arbitrary, subjective, and really not based in any empirical evidence. So since none of these things are true, we're not under any obligation to continue to perpetuate them into the future. So if you understand that sex is a normal function, it's part of the human condition, you see that there's really no gain from assigning negative social judgments onto folks that you want to have sex with, especially when it comes to the type of sex or the type of entertainment that you want. It really makes no sense. So just what is sexual positivity? I'm glad you guys asked that. So, sex positivity is the acceptance of sex and sexual pleasure as part of the human condition. It is realizing that sex does not impart or strip value, and it doesn't impart value on or strip value from a person. And it's the realization that sex is not inherently wrong, nasty, or immoral. Like the examples that I put up? Yeah. I really like this picture. Make me a sandwich. I made him a sub. I love it. So, how does one... I'm sorry that there's nothing on this slide, so I'm just going to wing it. So, if you want to be sex positive, you must unlearn patriarchal ideology. I am going to minimize. I'm going to restore this down now. We must unlearn patriarchal ideology, folks. Like, it is an imperative. Let me see the main screen that I have here. Here we go. I was able to escape from it. Yay. Okay. Hi, it's me now. I'm back. So yes, we must unlearn patriarchal ideology in all facets. The three that I had up here were regarding gender, sex, and sexuality. So what does that mean? That means, in regards to gender, it means understanding that no one is inherently better or superior to anyone. And that the roles and the rules that we have been taught to view as biotruths. Okay, side note. A biotruth is something that you don't question. It's basically one of those things that you accept and, AKA, it is what it is. That's what a biotruth is. So all the things that we have been taught in regards to gender as biotruths, or just being it is what it is largely false. And it's based on arbitrary things that we have been told throughout the ages, that these things are compulsory, that, that men are supposed to be virile, all men are heterosexuals. The prime objectives of being a man is, fuck bitches, get money, AKA acquire finances, property, and property does include women and children, progeny, things like that. That men always have to show strength in situations, that they always have to be aggressive, and they must respond to any threats, whether they're physical, mental, emotional, or intellectual, that they must always respond aggressively in kind to those things. Otherwise, they are not a real man. There is no such thing as a real man, and there is no such thing as a real woman. Mainly because gender is a spectrum. There are not just men, there are not just women. There are folks who are who are gender non-conforming. There's so many different types of genders out there, and no one is the arbiter for what is a real anything. It's all and this is not to say that, like, that for you, like, if you make the choice that you feel that as a man that you want to uphold certain things or behave in a certain way, like with honor and dignity, or certain types of behaviors that, let's say, you learn if you're like in the military or something like that, that is totally fine. It is totally your choice. What it means when you're sex positive is that you understand that these behaviors are their choices that you have made. You've made the choice to carry yourself in this way, and how you carry yourself is not compulsory to every single man and boy, because there is no right or wrong way to be a man or be a boy. There are toxic ways, and that's where toxic masculinity comes in. And those are mainly the behaviors that I described before, that as a man, that you have to act hard, that you have to be emotionally unavailable. And we've seen that those things, that when men continue to perform masculinity in those ways, that it not only impacts people around them, women especially, that it also impacts them. It impacts their physical, mental, and emotional health. Because if you feel that you cannot emotionally confide in someone, whether that's a family member, or let's say if you're a straight man, and a heterosexual man, and you feel like you can't confide in someone. You can't confide in your partner about the things that you are feeling, things that you're going through, and that you can't talk to your partner, you can't talk to a therapist or anything like that. You keep those things inside of you, and they will come out, they will spill out in very, very negative ways, whether that's intimate partner violence, whether that's substance abuse and addiction, or whether it's something like, cardiovascular disease or something. Like there is a reason that at times we see a good number of Black men like dying young, like dying before 50 or dying at 50. And it's not necessarily because of diet and, the things that come with that, diabetes and, metabolic disorders or whatever. It's because you guys aren't expressing yourselves and how you feel. You're keeping shit inside, and it's fucking you up on the inside. And you feel that if someone tests your manhood, that you have to respond violently and things like that. So yes, realizing that these things are arbitrary, and that you do not have to act this way. And in fact, there are more positive ways that you can be a better person, that you can put those things to the side. And I understand that it's hard, especially for men of color, especially for Black men, especially because you know, in a white supremacist society, you can't really, you are marginalized. So folks who are marginalized, they tend to grab at and hold on to whatever type of privilege they can, to at least to you know, to feel like they're in charge or they're in control. And with Black men, it is often patriarchal ideology, because while they can't capitalize on you know, on a white supremacist society because, you know, they're not white men, they still have a whole lot of pull and social privilege in their respective communities because they're men, you know, in you know, within their own groups. So and unlearning that and letting go of that is a really tough thing, but it is something that has to be done. Otherwise, you know, we'll keep going in circles in regards to liberation. Liberation is not a one issue thing, it's a multi-issue thing. We can't just focus on racism and not attend to the intra-community issues that are going on with us. And with us, it is misogyny, it is misogynoir, it is the adherence of patriarchal ideology that that a majority of Black cis men still hold on to that, you know. And women too, because men are not the only ones who perpetuate patriarchal ideology. Women do it too. So, yeah, so when it comes to gender, just realizing that the roles that we've been taught, that how men should behave and how women should behave, those aren't, those are untrue. As I said, there is no wrong way to be a man. There's no one way to be a man. There's no one way to be a woman. Period. When it comes to unlearning patriarchal ideology, when it comes to, in regards to sex, understanding that, again, men are not inherently superior or better than women. Therefore, when it comes to the pursuing of sexual pleasure, that it is a normal thing for human beings, period. It's part of the human condition. We're born into this world, we grow up, you know, we gather, connect different connections and relationships, we have sex, we seek out sexual pleasure. If we want to, we have kids. Then we go through, you know, changes in our physical status, you know, different health conditions, and then we die. Boom. You know, having sex and, you know, having the urge and the pleasure, it's a part of the human condition, meaning that all human beings go through that, including women. We women like sex. We like, you know, to seek out our pleasure, whether it's just for the hell of it, or if we want to receive compensation for it, and that is totally okay. Also, just because a woman or a girl has sex, you know, before you know, she gets married, you know, just realize that sex is not this thing that strips value from someone. It's just an act that, again, is part of the human condition. It doesn't ascribe value onto someone, and it doesn't take away value from someone as a human being. So, the whole virgin whore thing, just dump that. I know it's very seductive, because if there's anything that as humans we're good at, especially marginalized groups, it's finding any sort of privilege that we may have while being oppressed and using that to oppress others. Everyone's guilty of it. I was, you guys are, some of us still are. You know, and it takes time and diligence to unlearn that and unpack that. to think about the epistemology of the things that we think are just our bio truths. How do we know? How do we know what we know? We have to think about these things. I'm in control, he shouted as the NYPD planted coke on his persona at his guard. Mabase, I love you, dude. You are funny. So once you understand that sex is just an act and that there is nothing inherently evil or nasty about it, and that it is okay for some folks to offer that as a service for monetary compensation. Like, I don't know about you guys, but once I started unlearning this stuff, I felt the most freedom and relief just wash over me, because that's like a million less things about other people that you don't have to worry about. In fact, you never had to worry about it in the first place. So, I mean, that's just me, but yeah, guys, like, trust me, just unlearn this ideology and you will feel so light as a feather. Hopefully not stiff as a board. Well, depending. There are some things we like stiff as a board. So, okay. And also unlearning patriarchal ideology when it comes to sexuality. Understanding that when it comes to sexuality and things like, say, sexual orientation and identities, accepting that folks are not just heterosexual. That's very important. That's very, very, very important, because that's 50% of the battle. The more now you know, and knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe. All right, sorry, but I digress. But yes, once you accept that in this beautiful blue shaped orb that we are fortunate to inhabit, sexual fluidity exists in over 500 species on the planet. And that includes humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, us. So yes, we did not evolve to just be heterosexual. There are gay people, bisexual people, pansexual people, folks who have very scant sexual desires in the first place. I believe that's called demisexual. And there are folks who are aces, aka asexual. And then I think their asexuality, there's a spectrum. I think there's even a spectrum to asexuality. So understanding those things and accepting the reality that things are not in a binary. Things are not A and B. Most things are not just A and B. That's more than half the battle when it comes to this and when it comes to unlearning patriarchal ideology. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This was the last slide that I was supposed to show you guys. Sorry. So let me make this a bit small. Let me make myself a bit smaller. So, to be sex positive in the end is to understand the risks that come with sex acts. But to understand that sexual pleasure, sexual freedom, and sexual diversity are important on the micro and macro level. So, of course, with sex, there comes the risks. We're human beings. There's risk of disease, there's risk of pregnancy. These are things that come with the human condition. Like I said, we're born. Some of us are able to give birth to other human beings. Some of us aren't. We get diseases and we die, or if we don't manage those diseases, we die. Excuse me. So, but that doesn't mean that doesn't make anything, that doesn't make it nasty or dirty, or means that that taking part in it means that you have no idea, that you have no foundation of morality, knowing what's right and what's wrong or anything like that. No, 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 not at all. These things aren't associated with, with sex acts and the risks that comes with them. So this gets into not only stigma that comes with sex and different sex acts, but in regards to dealing with sexual health. We have such negative, there's still a lot of negative stigma when it comes to contracting sexually transmitted diseases and infections, especially HIV, AIDS. There's this thought of, especially if when folks are seeking out sexual partners, they want to know if someone is clean, which is loaded. And it's loaded, and it puts out it perpetuates the idea that if you have a sexually transmitted disease, that you are nasty, that you're dirty, and things like that. And we really need to get away from that, because considering that, especially in the United States, that we still do not have comprehensive sexual education in, starting from our elementary schools all the way to high schools. In fact, a good portion of states within this country, they still teach abstinence only sex ed, which is why those states that still teach that see the highest rates of teen pregnancy. It's because we're miseducating and diseducating our populace. We're trying to, in order to control their behavior. And as we know, when it came to things like, the prohibition of alcohol, trying to legislate, trying to police human behavior in that way, via prohibiting folks from drinking alcohol, only made it worse and created an underground. It was basically responsible for how the mafia blew up, right? So there's always negative consequences when trying to prohibit something, whether it's a certain substance like alcohol, or whether it's trying to prohibit folks from having the knowledge, that they need to make better and safer choices when it comes to sex. So Black feminazi does it. Black feminazi does it stuff. Oh yeah. Thanks for that. Oh boy. Yeah. Thank you, Mabase. Oh, fuck me. Anyway, so yeah, we definitely have to understand that that when it comes to all things sexually related, whether it comes to the type of sex, whether it comes to sexual and reproductive health, that these things, while they may have risks, they're just part of the human condition, and all we have to do is, if we arm ourselves with information needed to make choices, and also tackle the stigma that comes with it because of patriarchal ideology, we would all be better for it. So, whew, yeah, that was a lot. 56 minutes. I thought I would actually go to the full hour, but I think this was good. So I hope that the two people who are watching have gotten something from this. I will make sure that this is uploaded so that folks can go to it, and I can like re-show it at 6. I'm going to, of course, I'm gonna have to do some editing because when it comes to the, when on PowerPoint it actually had my real name on there, so I did dox myself. I'm gonna do a bit of tinkering and I'm gonna upload it to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this has been useful. If you guys want me to, if it's possible to give this sort of this presentation again, I could definitely give it again at some point. But yes, I'm going to make sure that it's available on my Twitch channel and on my YouTube channel. So thanks for joining me. I have to go get something to eat because I still haven't gotten anything to eat yet. So I will talk to you guys a bit later. Again, thanks for joining me. Thanks for, to the two people who've watched this whole time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.